And there we go. So, hi Greg, we're just about to get into a little discussion about some points to do with the early stages of the project, and yeah, how you felt about the way that went, and then towards the end we'll discuss a little bit about how you're feeling about living in the house.
Okay.
So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was what sort of swayed you towards keeping the site in the first place and refurbishing the house rather than, say, buying elsewhere or building from scratch, building a new one.
Well, the house is very well located in Canberra, being in Yarralumla, and we certainly wouldn't have been able to afford building or buying another place in Yarralumla. That was out of the question. We did look quite extensively throughout Canberra for other properties that might sort of fulfill our needs and found nothing. And really, we'd been looking in a casual sort of way for several years, and there was just nothing. And had we bought something elsewhere, it's, I think, 100% certain that we would have had to then make some additions to that property anyway. So it seemed just sensible to stay where we were and change it to suit our needs.
Yeah. Yeah, when you start to delve into it, you do have to be pretty lucky, really, to come across something that allows you to tick all the boxes. Just
absolutely
sitting there staring at you, don't you? It's
Yep. And we had already done some small alterations to the house, which kind of made it, more suitable for our needs. But we'd kind of come to the end of what we could do with those little changes.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you two did look around a lot and just sort of hunting around the suburb, and I think various other places. So did you in fact look at new builds anywhere or that sort of thing during the process where you were trying to decide?
I guess we didn't ever think about
project houses, for instance, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, we didn't ever think about completely rebuilding anywhere else, partly again because we like the location where we are at the moment. I suppose we considered, in order to tick it off, we considered knocking the whole thing down, starting again, and that just seemed silly because, as I said, we'd made some changes that made it okay, and we didn't really want to change the layout of the backyard or anything. It was really just sort of quite identifiable shortcomings in the house as it was that we wanted to remedy. So we just sort of targeted those as much as we could to see if we could fix those things up.
Yeah, so it had a lot of advantages for you as it was in many respects.
Yeah.
As long as some of the specific problems could be dealt with.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess there's a whole question of embodied energy that comes into this along the line as well, and that it's retaining a house is I guess that's the single biggest thing you can do by way of recycling, isn't it? It's
Yep.
It's sort of recycling. It's actually reusing without changing. Yep. Fortunately, this was able to happen with not very much change, certainly to the outside wall line. Anyway, the footprint of the house pretty much stayed the same, didn't it, as we went along?
Yeah, remarkably little change considering, we'd never have thought it was possible in a way. I mean, certainly we weren't able to conceptualize for ourselves how you might go about keeping the footprint as we did, but meeting our needs and really changing the house so markedly.
Yeah. Perhaps go into a description of some of the major points that you found problematic with the house before we started on this process?
Yep. The kitchen was very small and it was a galley kitchen in shape, so it was long and thin. It was almost impossible to have two people working in there because they'd bang into each other. If the fridge door was open, no one could get past. And there was no way of actually expanding the kitchen in the space that it was in. And it would be complex to explain, but I'm sure you're aware of the problem. Essentially the roof line didn't enable you to go out further into the backyard.
Yeah.
Had we done that, there would also have been problems with either excessive sun or excessive exposure to cold in winter. So we really needed to internally reorganise to find another space for the kitchen. So that was one thing. Lack of northern sun in winter. The house is on a longitudinally, it's on a north-south axis, so it had hardly any exposure to the north. We'd made a slight change to add a family room, dining room out the back, which had north-facing windows. They had heating, underfloor heating, but it had single pane glass right next to the underfloor heating, and historically no curtains because they impeded the door. So the heat came out of the heated floor and went out the window. So that was kind of silly. And there was really no other significant northern sun access. So we wanted to somehow turn part of the house around to get that exposure to northern sun. So they were the major.
Fortunate, isn't it? Because your house is in fact perfectly aligned to within a degree.
That's right.
Along a north, south, east, west set of axes, which you don't often discover, but this one has it. It's just a pity that there was the overshadowing problem along the northern boundary.
Yeah. The other thing was probably that a lot of the space in the house was occupied with Georgia's work. So just psychologically for her, she was kind of always at work, because even if she came out the door, she was kind of half at work. So there was a desire to make sort of more of the house that was clearly our bit and not associated with work. So by adding bedroom and so on the top, you've got a bit that's very clearly ours.
Yeah, that's that I guess it's unusual problem in a sense, but there's many people work from home these days, and making that dividing line does become important, I think, psychologically, to make a big difference.
Yep, sure.
Yeah. Any experience with building or design before this effort?
Certainly with building, we've had, as I said, a couple of small additions to the house done already. We had never employed an architect before. So, the design components had been kind of us plus draftsmen, essentially trying to bang out something that would work. And I suppose we weren't mostly doing anything that was that so needed an architect. Certainly it made all the difference this time to have, it was absolutely essential to have an architect to be able to work out the design issues, because it was, I think, pretty complex to retain what we did retain and fit this whole new bit into the centre of it.
Yeah, it's a tricky little jigsaw puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, one of the nasty subjects, things like budgeting. Maybe you could explain just a little bit about, say, how you arrived at the budget and how easy or difficult you found setting that on the way through the project.
Okay, it really was quite tricky. It was a sort of a long process, because I think in the beginning, when we were contemplating doing something to the house and didn't have a clear idea what that would be, we didn't have sort of money on hand to really set a budget, or to be able to set a hard limit and say that's it and so on. I think really the persuasive thing was seeing the design, the early versions of the design, and it's got argued through obviously many iterations, and seeing that, we could have that, and then working out a way that we could do that, which involved selling another an investment sort of property that we'd had. And we were sort of so convinced by the design, I would say, that we thought, okay, we'll go all out to sort of make this possible, because clearly it was going to meet our goals. And it just, I don't know, that's about how it evolved, really. So, we didn't really have we said that the actual budget was certainly not in our minds when we began. And probably if someone had said cold turkey, all right, it's going to cost you this, we would have thought, oh no, that's completely impossible. But it was a question of seeing what was available. And again, comparing, with the alternatives, you asked about going to look at other properties and so on, and working out, well, this is really the only way and the best way of achieving our goals. And it also happens to be the lowest price, because if you look at all the other alternatives, like knocking it down, rebuilding, buying somewhere else, they're all more expensive.
Yeah, that's a critical thing, isn't it? Because that's always going to inform the decision to a large extent. You do have to know what the alternatives are going to amount to.
Yep.
I think that's pretty important actually for people to understand that it's a really important step to get that sort of background, to get that context in mind before you start making hard and fast decisions about budgeting issues.
Yeah,
they're never easy. It's always the hardest part of any design process, I think. And, doesn't matter how little or how much that you're wanting to spend either.
Exactly.
Problems never go away. Now, did you find that you enjoyed the design process as we were working through it? Or was it or what did you think?
Well, it was probably longer and more sort of detailed and elaborate than I expected, although we expected it to be, so I think it was quite a complex job. It ended up being about what we expected, I think. And it was enjoyable because we were sort of working through solving the very problems that had led to our wanting to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And sort of finding that this or that could be done, and it would cost this and it would cost that, and here were the materials that would make it possible, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, it so happens we're quite sort of interested in building and in materials and energy questions and so on, in a kind of amateurish way. So yeah, no, it was good fun.
Yeah, and I guess with this kind of process where an owner's working with a designer to work it up, it's always a good idea if it occurs as a partnership on the way through. It should just be a matter of ideas arriving in one end and getting agreed and then getting shunted back out again. And I don't think it works like that. It's a good design process should always be a hit it backwards and forwards, and things change along the line quite a lot usually. Eventually, with any luck, you get to a satisfactory conclusion at the end. But, I think it places the owners in a lot more control too than say with the project house process, where you can fiddle a little bit at the ends, but not very much with the core attributes of the design. There's so many things that are fixed that way, and they're not easily changeable. It differs quite a bit that way. Now, what did you think the most important elements in fixing the building contract, when we got up to the stage of the actual contract? There's lots of things that had to be sort of fixed in place. Now, did you find that certain of those issues seemed to you folks to be more important than others? What did you find yourself concentrating on, and what did you think of as elements in the design that could be more easily adjusted?
That's quite a hard one. I think really it was getting clear in our own minds where our responsibilities were and where the builder's responsibilities were. And, drawing a very clear line between that, so that you could look at a theoretical dispute or question or whatever and say, well, if this happened, this is how it would have to play out, and you'd have to decide this or you have to do that. So yeah, I think it's only when you're faced with the actual contract that you really think, whoa, okay,
it's pretty intimidating, actually, isn't it?
That's the moment. It feels like the rubber hitting the road a bit, or even more so than when people start knocking things down and actually doing stuff. That's when it
Yeah.
becomes sort of very cold and clear what you're in for.
That's right. I mean, the contracts are really, really critical things. And I think that point does get lost in many people, especially newcomers to the building game, is to just what you're going to get essentially is what's recorded in that contract. So it's like playing a game of synthesizing the building before you actually build it, to get that contract in the right form. And it really is that literal. So
I think what made a big difference to that and made that easier was the fact that you had worked with the builder before and knew of his reputation, and so we had a level of trust there. We knew the design was good. So there was kind of an envelope of feeling, well, basically this is okay. There might be some changes around, but basically this is all going to be okay. And then even more that was demonstrated, I think, once we started really interacting with the people who were on site doing stuff. Clearly they knew what they were doing, and they were very consultative. So again, you had that sort of follow through from the design to what was happening on the ground and the information that we got about it.
Did you find that you needed to change many things on the way through the build process as it went along, or not so much?
Hardly any, really. There were a couple of structural issues. There was an issue with the footings that needed to be reinforced to better tie down the roof in one corner. There was an issue with another corner of what was going to be the upper story that needed more support than had been provided. The previous lower story was fine for a single-story house, but if you're going to plonk another floor on it, there was an issue with the corner of the wall that needed to be reinforced. In both cases, the builder came to us and said, come and have a look. I'll show you what the issue is. And it was pretty clear that, there needed to be a change there. It wasn't changed to the structure or anything, that would be seen in the finished house, but it was a change in having to spend a bit more money on something that was unexpected, but completely justified. And there was one thing where there was an apparent sort of little lip of wall coming out in the kitchen that was built, and I think it was actually on the plan, and we said, oh no, hang on, now we see it there, we don't actually want that, and it was like gone the next day. So that was pretty much it.
Wow. That's probably leading straight into our next question. Did you find working with the builder a positive experience? And was it different to your expectations?
I think it probably exceeded our expectations. Again, we'd worked with builders before who were good. We've been lucky, I think, in having generally all good experiences with builders going right back. But these people were particularly good, and we had a very clear relationship. I think working with anyone who's a small firm, you're always going to find times when they've got some other job that has to be attended to, or there's a supply issue or whatever. Of course, we had the fires and what during our build. So taking that all into account, I don't think you'd have to say it was a positive experience. And again, it was the consultative thing, and the fact that Foreman in particular was absolutely excellent. Clearly, his building standards were probably higher than ours, so he sort of couldn't stand doing something that wasn't exactly right.
Always a good way to have it.
So that was very good.
Oh, that's great to hear. Now a few more housekeeping type things. Were you able to use the house while it was in construction?
We did use, Georgia used her consulting room. There were a few times, right in the middle, or the middle late period of construction when that wasn't possible. It was the middle of winter and power had to be cut off because of other things that were happening in the house and so on. But pretty much all the time she was able to use that back room after hours, at least sort of after 5 o'clock. And we were able to, in the latter period, reoccupy our bedroom around the back. So we could do it. It was you wouldn't have wanted to do it for much longer than we did, but it was workable. It meant we didn't have to pay rent elsewhere for quite as long.
Because you weren't around much during the period without a roof, were you?
Yeah, that was tricky. When August without a roof, I think is
Always clips your wings a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the end, you're in the house now and have been for how many months? About
since the end of March 28th, I think we moved back in, officially.
Getting on towards 6 months. So yeah, what's it like?
It's great. It's great. I think it's probably exceeded our expectations. It's wonderfully comfortable. It's warm. The northern sun thing is just fantastic. The upper floor, I think like probably 3 times so far we've had heating on for like half an hour or something upstairs. So the combination of sun coming in during the day, plus good insulation, plus we do have the underfloor heating in the bathroom, but that's three rooms away from our bedroom. That means that upstairs area is sort of somewhere between 18 and 24 all the time. Today it's 10 outside at the moment while we're talking, and it's 18 up there now. So, and there's no heating on.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. I think it's going to be warm upstairs in summer, but again, good insulation. I think that'll be fine. Downstairs is going to be cooler because now we've got a new, a whole floor between us and the roof. The kitchen is fantastic. Having the room is just brilliant. We've got storage. We've got room to move, bench space, everything that we wanted. We've got a lounge room. It's a bit smaller than it was, but we didn't use the old one very much, so that was kind of wasted space. What was our bedroom, which was the biggest room in the house, which was a bit silly, a bit of waste of space in a way. Having a private space is the biggest. That's going to become a music room. That's a work in progress, but the space is cleared out, and it's clear that it'll be usable for that purpose.
It was certainly a monster bedroom, wasn't it, that one?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Beautiful connection to the garden too. So.
And the connection to the garden has been preserved. Again, that was a good thing about the builders. They removed the little pergola that we had out the back just for the duration of the build, so they could put scaffolding up. Restored it exactly to its design, but in superior materials. It's hardwood now, not pine like it was before. And the back garden is exactly as it was, and the front garden's being landscaped. To sort of fit the value of the rest of the place.
Yeah, that's looking great out there now. Very impressive. So the last question was about being comfortable, and we'll actually be doing some monitoring in the not too distant future. Couldn't quite squeeze it in prior to this point, but so you obviously have found it pretty comfortable thus far.
Absolutely.
I think from discussions we had in the lead up to the design, the main large living space being on the southwest was just very cold most of the time and hot at the opposite end of the year. And didn't tend to get much use. That was one of the major problems, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And,
the other thing that's really good about the sort of comfort level is the lighting, and that's another thing that I think you can't get without an architect. The lighting is just terrific now. It's not just bright, but somehow it's all in the right place when you want it. And the lighting is, it's a magically enjoyable aspect of being in there at night.
Yeah. Well, it's sounding like overall a fairly happy experience, which is always good to discover at the end of a job.
Yeah, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, oh, that's great to hear. Anyway, we're probably running well and truly out of time at this point, so we've got to the end. Thanks for your help on all that, Greg, and pass on the thanks to Georgia.
Okay.
And we'll catch up again soon.
Indeed. Thanks, Peter.
Bye.
Bye.